It's that time of year when we look back on the year and perhaps dwell a little on our regrets. A handful of retired Montreal CEOs claim they have none. An associate professor of McGill University's Des Hôtels Faculty of Management interviewed management executives, and he wrote about his findings. The article is called Regrets, I've Had a Few. It was published in the Conference Board Review, and I spoke to Karl Moore about his findings. Good morning, Karl Moore.
Good morning, Lorraine.
So, as you take stock of your year, what do you regret?
Well, a couple of things. One, that I haven't learned more French, and something where I'm determined I really need to spend 15, 20 minutes a day just really focused on French. I listen to Radio Canada News in the evening with my wife, but I want to do better. So that's one thing I really want to change. Another is that the year before I traveled way too much. I was in Riyadh, Israel, Abu Dhabi, Burma, Beijing, wonderful places, but away from my wife and kids too much. And so that was something I regret, that I spent too much time away. And so this year and next year I'm spending more time at home because I'd like to think my kids want more of my time. And
you still have fairly young kids,
well,
right?
They're 12 and 14, so getting on, but still hopefully need their parents at home.
Key years. Now, you spoke to several retired CEOs for the article that you wrote for the Conference Board Review. Many of them, if not all, said they didn't have any regrets.
Well, it got me started thinking about this as I was reading a bunch of articles and an interview for the Globe and Mail CEOs. And one of the questions I asked is, any regrets? And almost all of them said no, which struck me as, a bit immature, to be honest. But when I thought about it, I talked to Bob Brown, who was the ex-CEO of Bombardier and CA, a friend of mine, and Tony Rigattuso, who was a middle manager at Standard Life. And both guys who had recently retired said, no, it's fine. When you look back over a long career, no regrets, which is, I think, fair summary of what they've done. But it struck me that I'm still in the middle. I'm still in the saddle, that I can have regrets because I can do something about them, that I can change and be better at what I do and improve my performance at work or at home or, on my ice hockey team, whatever it is. So the regrets have a very positive influence on my life. I can do better.
I think the key is what you just said. As long as you do something about them, in what ways do you think they can be transformative?
Well, there's some regrets where one of the key things I've learned this year, or relearned, I guess, is that you got to know what can you change, what can't you change. What do you just have to live with? I'm tall and bald, and there we are. I'm not going to change that. And I don't want any hear from hair transplant people. It's just something, there it is. But there's other things that I can change, and those are the things that it's helpful to feel regret, maybe occasionally a twinge of guilt, and say, I really shouldn't have got upset at that clerk in the store. That was immature. I've got to grow up a little bit, and that's something I think it's good for us and healthy. So it's a matter of saying, I'm going to change my life, maybe in extreme transform it, by doing something a bit better. Now, we occasionally get that wrong. We change our minds. It actually wasn't better, it was worse. But by and large, when I talk to people over 20 years old, they can say I'm better than I was 5 or 10 years ago in some ways. I've improved. And I think regrets and even on occasion some guilt is not a bad thing.
Well, More Magazine had a piece that's a magazine for women over 40, talking about being 50, which I turned not that long ago, and saying 50 so much better than 40. And everybody says it's because of all the things you've learned in the meantime, right? I mean, there are other reasons too, I guess.
Well, I think one of the other reasons you get more comfortable in your own skin. You accept who you are with your faults, but you accept your strengths as well. So it's a matter of being more relaxed. I've interviewed a bunch of CEOs about what's the point of the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, 50s, and so on. And I think, from 45 on, it strikes me, and from talking to them and knowing my own experience, it's actually a great time in life if your health's good, because you have a sense of comfort. You have a sense you're no longer trying to prove yourself in the way you did when you're rightly in the 20s and 30s. You become to a point of a sense of comfort, but I also think a sense of self-awareness and saying, I can do some things better.
Now, it's really interesting looking at the list. You've interviewed CEOs still in the saddle from one of your pieces, and it's interesting to see what they do regret among them. And this one, of course, sticks out, allowing the board to pay me too much relative to the rest of my team. How many do you think follow through on regrets like that and do something?
Well, probably not a lot, to be honest, because it's hard for human nature to think that I'm underpaid. But it's interesting when you look at Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, two of the richest people in the world, both CEOs, what they've done is given away promised to give away at least half their money. And they're getting a lot of other billionaires on board in the States, particularly to say, let's do this. You simply can't spend it all. What do you need it for anyway? And there's a sense of the best way to die, particularly as a rich person, is having spent most of it in good efforts. And I remember I took 40 students to spend a day in with Warren Buffett Omaha. And as he was leaving, we left a restaurant, had lunch with him. He got into a Lincoln and drove off, a car you might have take you to the airport. No chase cars, no security guards. He drove off. Now he's driving to fly in his own jet to play golf with Bill Gates in Palm Springs.
They're buddies, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. They play bridge, they golf, and this is great. It's something, well, I guess they understand each other.
Right.
But it's something where you go, he doesn't, he lives a good, enormously abundant life, but he's giving away a lot of his money. And I think that's a great example he and Bill Gates have set for much of the world, well, the rich part of the world. Have
you seen The Social Network yet?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
You must see it. You must see it, if only for picking up on management regrets.
Yeah.
It's really true to the theme we've been talking about, because there is a moment when the man who's on the cover of Time magazine is Man of the Year, the creator of Facebook. I won't give the movie away, but there is a look of such regret on his face, very well acted. He's lost his business partner, his best friend at Harvard from his early days. So I thought of it as soon as I saw this list, because I guess it talks about not following the fads, taking advice from people you really trust. Those are hard things to do when you're at the top, I guess.
Well, it is. Partly it's lonely at the top as a cliche, but there's some truth to it. I have lunch. I do a little bit of CEO coaching. I have lunch with some of these people, and part of what they look at as I'm similar in age. I've done something in the world, but I don't report to them. I'm not on their board, so they can have a conversation where they can share some of their concerns and anxieties without it coming back and biting them on the rear end. So it's something where they enjoy sharing that with me, and I might even have something occasionally useful to say, but it's mainly I listen to them, and it gives them an outlet. And this is something which I think is valuable for a lot of people because there's so much competition and so much concern about the optics of things that I think people at the top need to have some friends, or at least people they can sit in and talk about their issues, their concerns, and their worries. They often have that with their spouse, but it's helpful to have someone else who does that. Men are probably not as good as women at this, by and large.
Yes, we love talking about our regrets with each other over dinner. That's true. Back to that list of top regrets among CEOs who are still in the saddle. And you touched on this at the beginning of our conversation. You hear it all the time from retiring politicians and to the big sports stars. I'm not always sure how genuine it is when they say, well, I allowed my work to come before my family. But there it is on your list. Family. I find neglected my time with family in order to achieve. I mean, that is a real tough balancing act for anyone who is in a high-powered job.
Yeah, it's a really tough issue because, and it tends to be successful people who've accomplished a fair bit because they have opportunities to accomplish a lot that keeps driving them, and they've been rewarded by their need for achievement. And society and, in fact, their families appreciate what they've accomplished financially or just, the accolades that come to them. And it's tough to step back and let kids have the limelight. And that's something which high achievers tend to wrestle with is stepping back and just allowing someone who's not even that competent in a sport, let them go and do it. Let them have their accomplishment. Let them be front and center is something which is tough, I think, for a lot of high achievers to do. But as parents, we recognize the need for that. Now, you talk to people in their 50s and 60s, by that time, their kids are often grown up, and it's really too late. It's something you look back and said, boy, I think I missed the ball on this one. I fell
short. I could have been coaching the soccer team.
I should have been there. There's a guy named Robert Milton who used to be their Air Canada president. His kids are the same age. And I remember I was really impressed that he was one of the few dads at soccer or T-ball back in the day consistently for his kids, because I was one of the few dads. I have a more flexible job than he did. But he was there, and not the most well-loved person in Canada, but I really appreciated his willingness to put family first, and though he worked a lot, is to make room for them in a very busy life.
So turning regrets into resolutions, I guess that's what we'll be thinking about the next 24 hours.
Absolutely. And to my mind, you can get carried away with this, absolutely, and have excessive guilt. But I think there's a room for a bit of guilt to lead us to be a bit better in what we do. And sometimes we can argue about the definition of that. But I think for most of us, we know that we'd like to do something and improve our lives a bit because we'll be better people, we'll make a bit of better contribution to the world.
Well, thank you for giving us something to think about this morning.
Nice to chat, Lorraine.
That's Karl Moore. He's an associate professor at the Des Hotels Faculty of Management at McGill University. What are your regrets? Or how do you plan to change? What are your resolutions? You can give us a call. You can text us at 22222. That's 5 2s. Or you can send us an email at daybreak@montreal.cbc.ca.